what's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert, money mindset and fulfillment coach, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur. Come sit with me while I spill the real tea on what it's like to practice using intentional manifestation, demystify all of the woo-woo and confusing bullshit that comes along with creating the life of your dreams, and give you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, spiritual, and professional growth journey. The goal of this podcast is to support and guide you towards manifesting all of your dreams, shed light on the things that people are too scared to talk about, and encourage you to become the person who gets to have it all, be it all, and do it all. I am so happy you are here. Let's fucking do this thing. What's up, loves? Welcome back to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Today's podcast episode is so incredible for any and all of my women out there that have a challenging relationship with food. And today's guest that I've had the honor of bringing onto the podcast, Miss Sloane Elizabeth, was such an incredible person to talk to about all of these different things when it comes to our relationship with food, manifesting food freedom, and really learning how to tap into your intuition when it comes to understanding what it is that your body needs, what can shift and change in your relationship with food, and ultimately evolving into the highest version of yourself with the manifestation process to live your healthiest life and have this really healthy dynamic with food. And one of the biggest things that you'll hear in this podcast episode that really stood out to me is that this is huge because food is something that we interact with on a daily basis. And in order for us to have this sense of freedom inside of ourselves that I believe majority of women don't have when it comes to food because of diet culture and all of the societal pressures that have been placed on us as women, it's so necessary for you to heal your relationship with food and heal your relationship with your body so that you are able to be more at peace and more at ease and feel that sense of freedom inside of yourself on a daily basis and truly be the highest version of yourself. And it was just so refreshing talking to Sloane. We both have such a similar perception of manifestation and what it takes to do this inner work for yourself. So Sloane is a holistic wellness coach and food freedom expert, specializing in helping women stop dieting, obsessing, restricting, and stressing over food so that they can experience food freedom. And she uses a unique and powerful combination of science and spirituality to help her clients eat with love and intuition. Sloane is also a published author and has been featured on Food Network, Betches, and Authority magazine. And you will absolutely love listening to all of the wisdom that Sloane has to offer in this podcast episode. So without a further ado, here is Sloane. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Today, I have Sloane Elizabeth on the podcast here to chat with all of you about our bodies, our relationship to food, all of these incredible things that we all experience on a daily basis and how to get into this very happy, healthy, healed position with it. So Sloane, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Kat. And you're right. It's something that we deal with every day. Even if you struggle with food, you still have to eat every day. It's not like alcohol. If you struggle with alcohol, maybe you just quit cold turkey, but that's not it. So I feel like everyone should be able to get at least one thing out of this conversation.
So good. Such a good point. I've never thought about that before. So it's so true. This applies to everybody listening. And to kick this off, Sloane, I would love for you to share your story with us of who you are and what has led you to be in the position of where you are today and what you do.
Totally. So I'll try to keep it brief, but my name is Sloane Elizabeth, as you said, and I'm a holistic wellness coach and food freedom expert. And I teach women how to eat with love and intuition using science and spirituality to heal their relationship with food and body image. So I definitely came here to this place from personal experience, both in the terms of being a serial entrepreneur and being born to be my own boss, I would say, plus my struggles with food and body image. So in high school, I was pretty confident. I didn't really care about my body. I felt healthy. I felt fine. And I was already entrepreneurial. I started a baking business when I was in high school, selling like the most decadent, delicious cookies, brownies, blondies, all the things. And then it wasn't until the end of high school when I felt like my body was out of my control. I essentially, looking back, realized that I went through puberty just way later than most of my friends. And so my body was changing, and that totally freaked me out. I thought there was something wrong. I felt like I was gaining weight uncontrollably, which wasn't the reality, but that was my perception. And so, being a math and science kind of person, I tried to be scientific about it, which led to Google, which led to diets and diet culture. So, for me, that looked like orthorexia sort of tendencies. So I wanted to be as healthy as possible. I created all of these super arbitrary bullshit diet rules where I told myself I could only eat dessert twice a week, which, as someone that owned a baking business and like has a sweet tooth, was never going to work, nor should it. So I failed every week. I had my mom start packing my lunch or my sandwiches on rice cakes instead of bread, like tiny but really hyper controlled things. And it was all about control, which I later learned. So then when I went to college, I knew that I wanted college to be amazing. You hear it's supposed to be the best 4 years of your life. And I knew that what I was doing to my body was not healthy for me physically or mentally. I knew I had to change, and I knew that, I don't know, I had to figure this out. So I actually decided to be pre-med because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I didn't know that nutrition was even a field of study. And then as soon as I took my first nutrition class, I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly it. This is what I want to do. And I had begun healing my relationship with food first through the science, really understanding what's actually true about biology. Like, how does your metabolism actually work? Not according to like the Pinterest ads that tell you to not eat bananas, but like, how does it actually work? I also was in like neuroscience classes and psychology classes, so I was understanding how fear works and how the brain works. And things started making a lot more sense. But it didn't fully click for me. And I wouldn't say I really healed until I opened myself up to spirituality. And I was naturally a spiritual person, but growing up, I was raised Jewish. I still like the Jewish culture, the community. But I was more interested in this kind of other looser form of spirituality. I believed more in the universe. And so in college, kind of away from home, I felt like I could actually explore that and what that meant. And so as soon as I did that, I realized what the universe was, what your higher self is, what your intuition is. Like, that's when it clicked, because I was like, oh shit, like I have so much lack, so much scarcity around food in my body, and I am trying to chase control when really it's just making it all worse. And so that development, like, I guess you could call it a spiritual awakening, if we want to, that's what helped me unlock the rest of my food and body image healing. So then when it was time for me to decide what kind of wellness coaching I wanted to do, like, I knew I was going to graduate college and not have a boss. Like, I knew I was going to work for myself. And I was trying to figure out, like, I was posting a lot of recipes. I wanted it to be deeper. I wanted to do self-love, but my people that were already on Instagram knew me for food. And so my boyfriend kind of helped me, because I was like, which one should it be? And he's like, well, isn't it kind of both? And I'm like, Bingo. Yeah, of course it's both, right? It's like how to love food and how to love yourself through food and how to have that self-love through your relationship with food. And that's where it all came in. And I also realized that nobody else was talking about your intuition when they were talking about intuitive eating. And it still blows my mind and drives me crazy that so far I'm the only one I've found. And like, if anyone else is out there and they teach it this way, like, let me know. But most people just say your intuition is what you're craving when it comes to intuitive eating. And as you and I both know, that's really not what your intuition is about. Maybe that's like 3% of what your intuition is capable of telling you.
Yeah, 100%. Freaking love your background and everything that you shared, because not only do I relate to it, but I can imagine so many of the listeners do as well. And coming to this position of really mixing the worlds of science and spirituality has completely changed my life, not only with my body, but also with so many other things. And really, like you said, learning how to tap into and trust your intuition in a way that is going to guide you and lead you to being the highest version of yourself. So I would love for you to explain for our listeners what you just said on like intuitive eating actually being related to your intuition, because I would also say I've never heard anybody talking about intuitive eating actually talking about their intuition. It is always like, what does your body crave? When is your body hungry? All of those things. And it feels as though there's almost like this distrust in intuitive eating because of the things that can happen through it. So
Yes, totally. And I do hear this from people. And I want to say that I'm so happy intuitive eating is becoming more mainstream, but there are a lot of misconceptions. And sometimes when something becomes really mainstream really fast, there's a lot of gaps that are created. So, and that's why I call my method eating with love and intuition, because intuitive eating, people may think it's a diet and it is not, but it is a label, right? Like there are 10 principles to intuitive eating, the way that the two dietitians that created it kind of structured it. So what if you're following 9 principles, but not the 10th? Then on that day, are you not a like, end quote, intuitive eater? Right? Like if you don't follow all 10 of the principles, are you not an intuitive eater? That doesn't work for me. And principles sound like rules if you're someone that's coming from diet culture.
Yeah.
So when you eat with love and intuition, the way that I teach my clients, you can't fail. Sure, sometimes you're going to be eating and you won't be spot on with the intention of love and intuition, but you're still eating. You can't fail at eating. And so that's a really important piece for me, because I think a lot of people are scared that they'll fail at intuitive eating, or they don't trust their body yet. So they're like, all right, well, if I just listen to my body's craving, I'm going to eat McDonald's every single day because that's what my body's craving. Or I'm just going to eat cake for breakfast because that's what my body's craving. So if you're telling me to listen, I'm never going to stop, right? That's the fear. And I totally hear you, because that way of thinking is wrong and you've been led astray. But for everyone listening, thankfully they're here. So how does this actually come together with intuition? Well, I believe that your intuition can kind of be thought of in 3 parts. I believe that we have this deeper soul intuition. This is what you probably think of with general manifestation, right? That like gut feeling, the intuition that you receive downloads from the universe and from your higher self and your spirit team. But then you also have body intuition. This is maybe like when you get chills, right? Or when you feel like someone's following you and like your body feels that. It's also your hunger cues and your fullness cues and what your body's craving. That's included. And then I think that we also have a mental intuition, because we get to have these really beautiful, smart brains. And so the logic gets a chance here. So I like to think of all 3 pieces as your holistic intuition. So then when it comes to deciding what to eat or how to take care of your body using this holistic intuition, yeah, your body gets a say, but it's not just your body. It's also your heart. It's also your soul. And it's also your brain. So the example I like to give is like, let's say you're sick and you have a cold, and so you can't really smell or taste super well, and you just don't really have an appetite. If your intuition was just what you were craving, you probably wouldn't eat. Maybe you'd skip a meal because you're not in the mood for anything, and that's what your body says. Is that actually the most aligned, loving choice for your holistic well being to skip a meal? No. So, what does your brain say? Your mental intuition says, yeah, it's a smart idea to still eat something. Okay. And then what does your soul intuition say? What's the nudge that you're getting? What do you know deep in your heart you need to do in order to take care of yourself? Maybe it's having, that chicken noodle soup. Or maybe it's having pancakes or French toast. Like, I just love breakfast food. So whenever I'm not feeling great, like that's comfort to me. And so maybe that's what my intuition is saying. Like, okay, yes, brain, we should eat. Body, you're not super hungry. So we can have something a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller. And we need to feel nourished and cared for right now. So let's go with that comforting XYZ food. That's how it all works together. And this is also the case with holistic health in general, because it's not just about what you're eating. It's also about how you exercise or move your body, your morning routine, your evening routine, self-care in general. And it's not just what your body's asking for. It's all of that.
Absolutely. It's so powerful to hear you speak on it in that way, because it's like a lot of the times, one of the biggest things that I hear with the women that I work with is like, how do I know if it's my intuition or my ego? And that is like a foolproof system of what you just said, of like, okay, this is the impulse, this is the urge, this is the craving, but is that craving going to serve my highest good? Is it going to serve my soul? And checking in of like, is this in my brain? Is it the thought, the intuitive thoughts? Is it that impulse, or is it at a soul level? And checking in with all three so that you can make the most aligned decision for yourself to then get what you want out of it.
Completely. And I think it's really important to use that when you're saying no also, because I think in life, right, someone might be scared. Oh, am I saying no to that out of fear, or am I saying no out of love, right? To a job opportunity, let's say. How do I know what my intuition is saying? Well, is it out of fear or love? Same with food, because I get people who struggle with restricting, and then they are scared to say no to food once they've released the restriction, because they're scared that if they say no to the cupcakes, because they're really not in the mood for cupcakes, but like they're scared that saying no is actually a restriction. And so we have to, of course, say yes and like be open to receiving and be open to those affirmative actions, but we also need to be able to say no and not be scared of a no, and be able to discern between that fear voice, the ego, and the loving, intuitive voice.
Absolutely. It's almost like setting like those energetic standards of what you're available for and what you're not.
Yes. Boundaries.
Totally. Boundaries. It always comes back to boundaries.
Literally. And actually, I love that you mentioned that, because I do teach boundaries a lot. And sometimes it's spoken boundaries, because a lot of times it's like a mother has passed down these disordered eating behaviors, or a grandmother, or maybe your friends talk about it. And if you're close with them and it feels right, you can set a spoken boundary and say, this is what I'm going through, and it would be wonderful to not hear those things, however you want to set the boundary. But sometimes people are not going to listen, and sometimes it's people that you wouldn't even be comfortable setting a boundary with. But when you set that energetic boundary, which typically blows my clients' minds because they didn't know that was a possibility, they didn't know that was available, it changes everything. And one note I'll say is that, and I'm sure you know this, like in order for those energetic boundaries to be well received and respected, you have to respect them also. Yep. So if you want people to stop making comments on your food, which I hate when people make comments on other people's food, like, wow, are you really going to eat that? Or that looks so gross, or like, wow, that's a lot of food, or whatever it is. if you want people to stop doing that and you want to set an energetic boundary, you better make sure that you're not judging and commenting on your own plate, because you set the standard. You get to set what you're available for, but then you also set the precedent and the standard for if that boundary is going to be respected.
Absolutely. 100%. Everything that you're saying really resonates with my journey and some of the biggest things that I've gone through with understanding, like, yeah, disordered eating that had been kind of passed down, and stepping into this position of understanding that for myself and then implementing it in my life was super, super challenging. So I'm super curious, like, what has been one of the most challenging pieces of your journey that you've had to overcome to be in the position that you're in now?
Hmm. So it's interesting because when you first ask that question, my mind goes to like business challenges because I feel like I've been in business at this point longer than I was struggling for. Because, and it's interesting, sometimes when I'm even creating content on Instagram, like I really have to dig deep into like my past, because that version of myself I don't even recognize anymore. Like it's so not relatable to me anymore, but in
Yeah.
a really cool, beautiful way. I would say the most challenging part though was definitely just the obsessive control. Like the thoughts were just in my head all the time, like falling asleep. I do have some OCD tendencies, so this didn't help, but I would like go to bed, think about breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then I would do it all over again. Think about breakfast, lunch, dinner, like did it all fit? And like it was just a repeating cycle. And it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And that's one of the main things I hear from people, that they want to get their brain space back and they just don't want to think about it all the time. And so that was really challenging for me also, like learning how to stop thinking about it and like let something happen and move on. And because food is energy and everything is energy, when I was able to move on from food, I was also able to move on from overthinking and obsessing about other parts of my life that I was maybe a control freak in as well.
I love that. Do you feel as though that was like the pivotal thing that really helped shift that for you, was the understanding that food is energy and therefore you have a way to release that energy in a way
Mm.
that isn't controlling of you?
Yeah, totally. Because, and I feel like the control in general and learning how to release control and surrender was the most important piece, and realizing that I could do that with anything because everything is energy, as you said. So learning how to actually let go in order to feel even more in control, because that's what we want and that's what we're scared of. People think if I let go of control, I'll lose all control and I'll feel even worse. And that might happen if you do this the wrong way and you just say, fuck it all, right? I'm not going to
Mhm.
control anything. Then, yeah, things might feel like they're crumbling for a little bit. And that might be a little bit too far. So instead, it's about learning what you should surrender and what you can keep control of, and let it be a co-creation. So just like manifestation is a co-creation, you're co-creating your life with the universe. It's the same thing here with your body. How can you co-create your healthiest self with your brain, your body, and your divine side, the soul and the universe all together? So that's also how I bring manifestation into all of this. I would say it's less about, here are the 5 steps of manifesting. This is how to manifest food freedom using those 5 steps. Like it's less about that and more about these principles, like co-creation, like intuition, like abundance versus lack, like surrender, all those pieces.
I love it. I love all of this. And something that I want to point out for the listeners and what you just said when I first asked you that question is like, you're in the position now that it's hard to look back on that old life and remember what it was like. And that's something that for the women that I work with, they always fear is like, I'm still close enough to like this past version of myself. Like, is it ever going to shift? Is it ever going to
Mm.
change? And then being able to be a year removed from that circumstances after doing the healing work, or like 2 years, 3 years, however long it's been, I feel the same exact way. It's like I look back on my life 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and I'm like, I don't even remember what it was like to be that version of myself. And it really does require me to dig deep into, okay, this is what it was like, because it's so possible what you're saying, like getting to this position with yourself, with food, with your body, and be in the space of freedom, which you just said, talking about food freedom and getting to that position. So, for the listeners, what does food freedom mean to you?
Great question. So, yeah, because I think that food freedom and like intuitive eating or eating with love and intuition have slightly different definitions. So, for me, food freedom means having unlimited, abundant options in choosing food that feels the most aligned. So then that also means there's no rules, there's no restrictions, and there's no judgment, there's no shame, there's no fear. So it means, yeah, having the freedom to choose based on what's the most aligned for me, and not just for body, like it's also convenience. And it's also, what you have available. So I think that that's important also to note for people that are like, well, I have to pack a lunch, or this is my budget for groceries this week. Like those pieces come into play as well.
Mm, cool. I love that. Okay, so what would you say for the listeners who are completely resonating with this and want to start to build that food freedom for themselves? Like, what's the first step that they can take in that?
So, first step is awareness, always. Being honest with yourself, being vulnerable, and saying, okay, I'm aware that fear is running the show. I'm aware that there's a lot of lack and scarcity. And I'm aware that, like, there's healing to do and that I deserve healing, I deserve support. Understanding where point A is. Most people just want to sit here like, Sloane, what are the 5 tips to get to point B? Well, I can't give you that until you are clear and judgment free about where point A is, which is hard. But having awareness and observing and being curious without judgment is so important. Because if there's any judgment about where you're at, that adds another layer of blocks, which is going to just make it even harder to move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I know it's hard. And then we got frustrated, like, oh, I know I'm judging myself. Why am I judging myself? I'm frustrated that I'm judging myself. And that's just like block, 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 block. So if you can just let it be and be neutral about it and say, this isn't bad or good, it just is right now, but I know that there's something even better on its way to me, and like where I am is where I am, but I'm going to do something about it. That's the first step before you go any further. And then I would also say, if possible, like get the support that you deserve, whether it's from me or a coach like me or a therapist or a dietitian or friends and family, like whatever you need, because if you're serious about doing this healing work, which you should be, it takes some third-party guidance most of the time, because a lot of this has to do with the subconscious, and you're not conscious of your subconscious right now. We all have blind spots. So that's also why I'm so passionate about coaching and mentorship in general.
Absolutely. Same to all of those different things. And something that comes up for me as you say that is that we truly can't change in our lives what we're not willing to recognize. And just like you said, people don't want to recognize what point A is, but they want to get to point B. But in order for you to get to point B, you have to heal the different things that point A's foundation is based upon. And just like you're saying with like creating this food freedom, creating this relationship with food, oftentimes it comes from scarcity and lack and all of these different things that we are taught, which I know in my experience definitely came from like diet culture and the perception of how women should look and how we should eat and all of those different things. So tell me, like, what do you feel like doesn't work in the world of diet culture and like where this scarcity and lack comes from?
Nothing works in diet culture.
Yeah.
But I think that It's really interesting because sometimes it is about beauty image and body image and standards, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's about totally different things, and food is just where it manifests. So I always find that to be really interesting as well when like I tell someone like, yo, none of this has anything to do with food. And sometimes they're like, what? Are you serious? And sometimes they're like, yeah, I know, you're right.
Yeah.
But when it comes to diet culture, literally everything is wrong. We are being taught to trust pretty much everything besides ourselves. Trust this meal plan. Okay, well, then I'm not going to know how to make meal decisions or portions. Trust this gym plan. Okay, well, then I'm not going to be able to pick up on my body's cues and like when it needs rest. You know, trust this coach even. Like, that's why I don't like telling my clients what to do. Like, I hope they trust me, but I don't want them to build their trust in me. I want them to build their trust in themselves. So anytime there is a rule, run the other way. Anytime there's a restriction, whether it's a portion restriction, a calorie restriction, a macro restriction, or even a time restriction, not good, right? Like you have to eat within 3 hours or you have to wait at least 3 hours. Bad. Intermittent fasting, bad. Keto, bad. And there are so many reasons why they're bad, but I think the thing that is the biggest theme is the lack of trust. And then it creates such fragility and scarcity. And then that's why the diet industry just continues to grow, because you stop trusting yourself, you start trusting diets, and then that diet doesn't work. So instead of thinking, maybe I should start trusting myself, you go to the next diet. And I cannot tell you how many women I've talked to who I ask, like, why didn't you reach out to me 6 months ago? If you've been struggling for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, why now? Like, why didn't you reach out a year ago or even 3 months ago? So many of them say, I honestly didn't know that this was an option. And it makes me so sad, but I'm like, okay, I'm not going to focus on the sadness. I'm going to focus on the gratitude that there is this option and that there are people out here talking about it and making it available. Because dieting is not it, but for a lot of people, it feels like it's it. It feels like it's the only option. It's just so not.
Absolutely. What you said at the very beginning, that really hit home with me, because I think that this is true for everybody in whatever it is that they're manifesting. Oftentimes we think it's like, okay, once I achieve the external thing that I desire, then I'm going to feel a certain way inside of myself. And hardly ever does it have to do with wanting to manifest that thing. It has to do with something else inside of ourselves subconsciously that like we've been rejecting or that we've deemed as not good enough, or whatever the limiting belief is, whatever the story is associated to it. And that manifests in these external things that we're trying to attain, or in the way that we choose to behave. And like you've been talking about, getting to this really honest position of what point A is and what is there gives you such an understanding of how to then get into the position of shifting and changing the other things and truly getting into alignment, not in the way of like what we think the world needs us to do or what we should do, but what's here from this place of your intuition.
Completely. And this is something I talk a lot about with body image, because people think once I lose weight, I'll be confident.
Yep. That used to be my story day in and day out, girl.
Yeah. And like, I wish it were that simple. I wish I could say that they're right, but it's not. And part of the reason is what you said, it's not the body that you want, it's the feeling that you want. And you can reach that feeling no matter what your body looks like. Same with money, right? If you're like, I want $1 million. Okay, cool. If I gave you $1 million, but I said you could never use it ever. No, you couldn't even tell anyone that you had it because you couldn't use it for status either. Like, would you still want it? No, of course not. If I said, okay, you feel miserable right now, you feel gross in your body. Okay, well, I can give you that model's body, but like, you're going to feel the exact same way that you feel right now. Do you still want that body? No, of course not. So it's not the body that you want, it's not the money that you want, it's not the boyfriend or girlfriend that you want, it's the feelings that you think it will give you. Um, so you can access those feelings now. And if you've been training your brain to judge yourself, to shame yourself, those neural pathways are getting stronger and stronger every day. So even if you lose the weight, those neural pathways are stronger than they were 3 months ago. And so you're still training your brain to judge whatever you see in the mirror. That's why the mental stuff and the internal work has to come before the physical. And I'm not anti-weight loss. Like there are a lot of intuitive eating coaches that are like strictly anti-weight loss, and that is not me, but it just cannot be the first goal. Not even the second goal, maybe like the fourth, maybe.
I love that though, because it's so true. No matter what anybody who is listening to this podcast or anybody in general is manifesting, we are most likely either going to play out past patterns or feel the exact same way that we feel if we do not do the internal work first. And I know that to be true, and that you know that to be true. So tell me, like, what's been possible for you in your life since doing this internal work and really shifting that relationship with yourself and with food?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, it's been so long that it's almost easier to think about like client wins. But for me, like I really believe that wherever you start with your healing, it can lead to other things. So, eating with love and intuition is wonderful, but that also empowered me to move my body with love and intuition and really feel intuitive and in touch with my body when it came to exercise. That also then allowed me to like travel with love and intuition, because every time I traveled or even made social plans, I was such a control freak. I wanted to know what time's the reservation, where are we going, what's everyone wearing, or what are we packing? And if it didn't go to plan, I would freak out. Same with food, right? If it didn't go to plan, if I didn't do what I said I was going to do or eat what I said I was going to eat, I would freak out. So it allowed me to be in the flow everywhere. It allowed me to be so confident in my body, no matter what my body looks like, as my body changes, because everybody's body changes. But even more recently, I'm thinking with clients, like, it's so cool because their friends and family notice, like they just start glowing. And I know that that sounds cheesy, but you're able to be present with your loved ones at meals. Like, yes, I'm a foodie, I love food, but like the main reason why we're there is to likely be with those people and to be with our company. So you're able to be more present. You're able to take more opportunities because you're not holding yourself back. When you're trying to be smaller and restrict yourself, you're dimming your light, you're hiding. So what happens when you stop hiding? What happens when you start taking your power back? You're able to jump on all these opportunities, whether it's manifesting money. I've had so many people manifest jobs, manifest romantic partners, just like really cool opportunities. And it all started from food because that was where they were limiting themselves.
Yep.
And because it really never even had to do with food in the first place, it was about control, it was about perfectionism, self-worth. But we started with food, and then that ended up trickling into all those other areas of life. So I think it really just leads to self-love everywhere. And self-love is so important in literally every category of life, whether it's money, career, purpose, relationships, romantic or platonic or familial. You're able to set boundaries wherever you need to. You're able to rely on abundance and love instead of lack and scarcity wherever you need to. And that's my goal for my clients. That's why I like to teach them these things in general and as it pertains to food, so that they can use these principles wherever they want to. The sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. And also just like pointing out to everybody listening that like what Sloane is talking about is so available to all of you. It is available to all of us. It's not just some people, it is literally every single person. So if this is resonating with you, truly giving yourself that opportunity to go deeper, to dive into this inner work that can set you free and allow you to be in the position that you are feeling in flow, in alignment, in this place of love with yourself. And it's been so beautiful to hear that from your experience. So one last question for you. What is one piece of no bullshit advice that you can give to the listeners who have been resonating with this message?
Okay, so I love giving this advice to women who are about to join the Food Freedom Collective, which is one of my programs. And the no bullshit advice is you are ready now, and stop kidding yourself that you're not ready. And I want to take a breath because I want everyone to let that sink in. Telling yourself that you're not ready is just your self-sabotage continuing to persist in that pattern. And so if you're hearing this, or you see something and a light bulb goes off and you feel that nudge, trust that that's your intuition. And this is like your first homework assignment. This is the first time that you get to break that pattern. And the voice that tells you that you're not ready is the fear voice that knows that it's about to be fucked. Like, your fear gets louder when it knows that love is about to win. So you are ready. Any reason why you feel like you're not ready is likely an excuse 95% of the time. So that's the no bullshit advice. Like, enough time wasted, right? Like, you're going to be eating 3 times a day, every day for the rest of your life. There are mirrors everywhere. You have to put on clothes every day. Enough is enough. Like, you're ready now and you deserve that now.
So fucking good. One of my favorite quotes is, do it now because later turns into never. And since I started my intentional manifestation journey, I've just been like, if I get the urge, if I get the pull to do something that is in alignment with my higher self, no more fucking around. Like, I'm making this happen right now because, just like you said, we're worthy of it.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yay. This has been such an incredible conversation. And I know, like I've said, so many of the listeners are going to resonate with it. So where can they find you?
Yes, so Instagram is where I hang out the most. I'm at Sloane Elizabeth. I'm also playing around with TikTok, which is sloane.elizabeth. And then I also have a free live masterclass I'd love to share with everyone. If you want me to give you the link to put in show notes, it's a totally free workshop teaching you how to stop obsessively thinking about food using the methods that I talked about here today. So that's a really great intro place to start. If you're like, okay, yeah, I want to get into this, like, what do I do? Where do I start? You can go ahead and watch that masterclass and just kind of start dipping your toe in the water.
Amazing. And all of that is going to be listed down below in the show notes. So anybody that has resonated with what Sloane is saying and wants to get in on how they can start to heal these different things, make sure to go check all of those show notes out and connect with you. And just thank you again for coming on to the show and sharing all of this wisdom with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was truly such a magical container, and I can't wait to connect with everyone and you further.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm so grateful to have these no bullshit talks with you. If you enjoyed today's episode or the podcast as a whole, please spread the love by leaving me a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with others. This is how I will be able to spread more of these good vibes and be able to make more of an impact on the lives of others. And if you're not already part of all of the goodness and communities that I have to offer, check out the show notes. I have links to the different ways that I can support you on your manifestation journey and help you live a life full of more money, fulfillment, and freedom. But that is all for now. So big love and hugs, and I will chat with you soon, babe.